Greetings humans, hello and welcome to the next confession at a Heretic. Today we go after the graphics of the newest X on PlayStation 5 consoles, which is Returnal. Housemarque is a company that has so far provided us with great arcade experience in their games. The recent premiere of Returnal is an excellent example of how the developer, so far famous for his two-stick shooters, has moved to the field of AAA games. Many predicted that the game would not be worth of the price that Sony was shouting for it, and that the visuals would be also not in pair with current top hits. Returnal is a game that is powered by the latest version of Unreal 4 engine. Despite of using the new engine, the developer smuggled into the project all his aces that he has up his sleeve and experience gained with each subsequent production released over the years. To not make it repetitive, I will start today's graphics review with what is average in Returnal, so that later on I will go to the superlatives that the game deserves. Returnal resolution is most likely temporal anti-aliasing upsampling, which is displayed on the TV as 4K image, where more specifically the Full HD base resolution has been reconstructed to 1440p, and this has been pulled up to 4K by checkerboard method. The result of this is that the image in motion appears not as sharp as one would expect from next-gen games. The overall end result is pretty good, but when you view the moving vegetation, you can see that it is less distinct and that it is the easiest way to spot artifacts from the aforementioned resolution reconstruction. In static scenes, as always on the UE4 engine, we can count on great anti-aliasing, which took care of minimalizing the jagged edges on the screen. The game runs most of the time at 60 FPS, but there are drops to the lower limit of 50 in selected more demanding locations. Fortunately for us, we will spend the vast majority of our time playing at 60 frames per second. The biggest Achilles heel of Returnal is its image quality, but it also does not mean that we should expect a drama that is on the agenda, for example in Quantum Break from Remedy, where we played in reconstructed resolution but with worse results. The biggest drawback of this reconstruction are surface textures seen from greater distances. There, the traces of the reconstruction are most clearly visible. When we look at the same texture closely, it looks noticeably better. The last negative aspect of Returnal graphics is the resolution of the selected shadows. Most often it concerns objects very distant from us, where their softened shadows are cast next to us. Fortunately, after playing the whole game, I only saw it a few times, so it's not like it's the new norm. Phew, well, since we have minuses behind us, it's time to start getting excited with what the Returnal has under its hood. There's a bit of it, so let's get started. Global illumination that covers the correct distribution of light and shadow in real time will immediately put a smile on the face of many players. To that, let's add a living, moving environment. And what I mean by that is the enormity of particle effects fluttering leaves, where the behavior of the latter can be influenced by shooting at it by the main character or enemies. And this is only the tip of an iceberg of such details, so I will come back to interacting with some of those effects on a regular basis later on in this clip. Particle effects is something that Housemarque made itself famous with Resogun, the launch title on PlayStation 4. Here, let's go back for a second to the near past for a moment. This studio, by releasing games such as Alienation, Nex Machina and Matterfall over the years, has shown that they are handling all cards in the backyard of particle effects on consoles. Going back to Returnal, you can see clearly that the years of practice has not been wasted. All such effects stun us during dynamic fights. The teleporting animation is particle mastery. It looks equally fascinating to the eye every time, and it is impossible to get bored or just simply not to like it. Opening every door between your rooms is a feast for the eyes, where you can see clouds of dust and sand pouring down from the frame of the futuristic gates. Opponents' explosions are another example of the usage of this technology, where my favorite is the moment when they crumble into ashes, through which, if we run, we provoke a violent explosion of said particles on the screen. Thanks to this, the destruction of the environment also gained, and all the sensitive elements of the environment in quotation marks fall to the ground. During that decay of such an object, you can see how its individual elements are shaded in real time until they fall to the floor, but unfortunately they disappear after a while. The effect of the fog floating above the ground is a small miracle. Not only does it look great and give the game a specific vibe, but it is also highly interactive. We can dilute it with the movement of our character. After waiting a moment, it starts to form again in the place where it was divided. The shots out of our weapons or the enemies also affect its consistency. The vegetation reacts to gusts of wind in the game world, as well as to any influence of the player and opponents caused by the returnal fighting. Let's add to the mix that volumetric lighting of very good quality, where it's hard to find any glaring simplifications of it. Of course, the duo of the fog crossed with the beams of light made me raise an eyebrow in approval. Returnal has many such moments where in the middle of battle all these goodies occurs on a screen at the same time, working together to contribute to the overall richness of the visuals on screen. Now let's talk a bit about SSR reflections. They are used as reflections in the water surface, and along with them Q-maps were also used. In a crashed ship we can encounter SSR reflection which disappear if we stop observing the object that is to generate the reflection itself. The only example of an RT application that I found so far is the reflection of our heroine in the mirror at her house. It is either some form of ray tracing or it is a duplicate room in the corridor which, as it were, pretends to be a reflection. You can see that the reflection is displayed in a lower resolution and with less detail than the original. The execution of the character visuals is right to please, but apart from the great texture of our heroine's face, the rest of her model does not differ from today's standards. Care was taken to reproduce the physical texture of the materials both on the character's clothes and in the materials of the game environment. I associate the enemies in Returnal with the stranglers from the film Edge of Tomorrow, which is a plus. There are many types of them, including interestingly designed boss fights. However, their models often lack detail and their texture are usually displayed in lesser quality. Fortunately, the game is very dynamic, so you can only see it when you zoom in on the cutscenes themselves. The game environment impresses with its artistic direction. Each location is rich in details and have very good geometry of objects. The multitude of effects in one scene is impressive, which is only enhanced by the great dark style of science fiction film. Textures in Returnal are displayed in high definition for a third-person game and contain a lot of detail. Of course, as in any game, we will come across weaker examples, but in general the textures are razor sharp and give the game a rough, tangible feel. So, is Returnal a really next-generation game? In my opinion, yes. Of course, one could argue that it was supposed to be native 4K and it is only reconstructed one, and that there are occasional drops in animation, but the number and interactivity of effects on the screen still enjoys and never overwhelms. The game itself is not as scary as it have been painted since the premiere, giving it a label of another very difficult game that it's not for everyone. I don't really like restarting the game after each death myself, but here it was done in really great manner. With each death, the world, the layout and the type of its room changes, and the Metroidvanic structure of the world encourages exploration. Additionally, words of praise belong to the music of Returnal, which you can now hear in the background. It gives an amazing atmosphere to an already very atmospheric production. Visually, Returnal is at first glance perhaps less attractive than such Demon's Souls on PS5. But it shows its claws with its showy dynamic graphics that, if experienced personally, will create a huge wow effect. Sony added a beautiful graphically and insanely playable shooter to the catalog that delighted me in every field. Just take it, play it, while drooling on a screen from your mouth. That's it for me in the Returnal graphics department, and you will hear me again in a week time about the graphics in The Last of Us 2 on PlayStation 5 in 60 frames per second after the new patch. From the advertisement of The Lost Soul, I refer you to the description of the film, where you can find the link to my Instagram, on which recently I tried to develop a small descriptive cycle about old but memorable hits from the past. Hi, Fi, and metal.